Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, and we will cover verses 142 to 150. The importance of Kaaba as Qibla, that is the physical symbol of the system. And these are the references. Again, in this presentation, I have used some excerpts from Meanings of the Quran, Volume 3. This is our contact. Outline of today's presentation. In the matter of Deen, there needs to be a Qibla. And Qibla, as it will become clear later on, it is some kind of a focus, some kind of a center, some kind of an aim towards which attention needs to be focused. However, this is not an aim in itself, as Allah is everywhere and Deen is universal in its approach to dealing with the issues of the whole of mankind. So Qibla over here, we should keep in mind, it is the physical side of it. Guidance to the straight path is as per the guidance of Allah. When the Jamaat Momineen acquires power in the land and establishes the system of Deen, then this Ummah, with its balanced approach, deals with the issues of mankind on an equitable basis. And this is according to the Quranic values, the values which we are studying on this platform. The efforts made on this path after accepting Iman can never go to waste as per the divine law. After Deen is established, then the Kaaba will serve as a Qibla, a physical symbol of the Ummah in order to promote unity. If the people of the book do not accept this position of the Jamaat Momineen, then it is their choice. Do not become distracted if people of the book do not wish to come to the guidance of Allah, as they are only following their own base desires. And this is an interesting comment in the light of the Quran, that most humanity which does not come to the Quran, they actually follow their own desires. And particularly those people who have gone through the Quran, read about it, have learnt about it, but still they do not wish to come to the guidance of the book. They are unjust people who do injustice to their own selves. Deen comes to resolve these issues, and which essentially means that if we do not follow this guidance, then essentially our behavior in the world will be injustice, because we will be doing injustice to our own self. That is the self which possesses so many latent potentials. We will not be able to benefit from those latent potentials and bring those out into the world. Remember, the Quran is al-Haq from Rabbil Alameen, and obedience to it demands that the Jamaat Momineen should never fall into any doubt and schism after starting to tread on this path, which essentially means that we should remove our doubts and any differences within us which exist without the guidance of the Quran, so that we achieve that integrity and unity which is essential to bring out our latent potentials. We go to the first verse of today's presentation, verse 142, guidance for mankind to the straight path. Sayaqulu sufaha'u minan nase ma wallahum an qiblatihim allati kanu alayha. Kullillahil mashriqu wal maghribu. Yahdi man yasha'u ila siratim mustaqeem. One objection of these people, that is Jews, is also that when the Qibla, the center of the people of the book, was continuing to be Jerusalem, then why did Muslims, by moving away from it, make the Kaaba their Qibla, that is their center? And today's presentation should be quite interesting because there is some mention of Jerusalem as well. And it is in the news for the last many years. I.e., why did they declare this to be their Qibla instead of that? This objection is also predicated on ignorance and foolishness. Otherwise, the matter is clear. Jerusalem is the national center of the Jews, and Islam invites the whole of mankind to gather in one center. So that means Jerusalem is not the national center of the system of Deen. It is of the Jews. Hence, it is obvious that the center of this universal invitation should be that which encompasses the East and the West, because Allah wants us to relate ourselves to the whole of mankind, to the whole planet Earth, the whole world. not that which is the goal of some specific nation or race, because Quran wants us to grow out of these biological and racial affinities. In view of this aim, Allah, according to His law of Mashiach, has guided this millat, Jamaat Momineen, towards the correct guidance of mankind. And we know it on this platform that this millat comes into form through their own choice. It is not born, it is not a biological kind of Jamaat, and it has to form itself. And this thing will become clear later on. Summary of the meanings of Qibla. This is the root of Qibla. It is the opposite of after. For example, in verse 34, before past and after future is the Amr of Allah. It also means without, also means front. The first part of the era, initial issues of some matter, beginnings. According to Ibn Faris, the basic meaning is something being in front of the other. So it is something in front of us. It also means direction, side, trend. Also appears for near, close, and also has meanings of strong, power. So some kind of an aim which should provide strength and power. For more details, see Lughatul Quran in relation to this verse and subsequent verses, which is in relation to this presentation and the verses through which we are going through today. In the system of Deen, the Qibla has special significance. Every system, state, government has one center towards which the gazes of all the citizens rise, which creates unity of thought and action. It is indeed a symbol of this system or government which is required to be kept in front. By keeping it in front, the aim is to express our association and loyalty towards this system or government. In the case of the divine system, the tangible Qibla could only have been that about which Allah has declared, for example in this verse, as the first house of Allah in the world, and characteristic is that whoever enters it will find peace in the world. And this is the beautiful aspect which the Quran has narrated, that since it is the center of that system in which whoever enters will find peace. Next is Islam has given an ideology of life, and an Ummah and a state came into being according to it. The physical center of this ideology or system was the Kaaba, which is situated in Makkah. The Quran informed the Jamaat Momineen that wherever you are in the world, the direction of your gazes should be toward the Kaaba. In other words, the aim of your life should be that system whose tangible symbol is the Kaaba. The thing which remains in front of our gazes all the time is called the Qibla. With this premise in mind, we will now begin our presentation today. The Kaaba, right at the outset, is the center for Muslims. In this verse, the Jews are addressed as a people who are Sufaha. And we have gone through this term previously as well. It means low intellect, unwise, ignorance, irrationality, people who are not looking at the things profoundly and rationally, but are looking at it superficially and through their emotive biases. The question is that what is the reason for this? In order to understand the reason, we need to see what was the invitation of this Deen, that is the Quranic system, and why did the Jews oppose it? This invitation was to declare that Kaaba as being the center which the supreme founder Ibrahim of the community of the upright had constructed. In other words, this invitation was for the revival of Millat Ibrahimi, that is the messenger Ibrahim followed the system of Deen. The Jews definitely linked themselves with Ibrahim, and we hear about this Abraham Accord nowadays, that all these people who are basically non-Quranic and they are trying to use the name of the messenger Ibrahim. But they wish to remain attached to their own national center. In other words, they shunned Millat Ibrahimi. The Quran has termed this turning away from Millat Ibrahimi as Safahat. So we can see Safahat, plenty of it in the Middle East. as has been seen in verse 130. This is the reason that the Jews are addressed as Sufaha. So we can relate to today's word. After this, let us turn to the objection which was raised by the Jews. In this objection, other than to maintain the holiness and importance of Jerusalem, there was an ulterior motive. The Jews were the children of Bani Israel, i.e., the progeny of Yaqub, who was the son of Ishaq and who was the son of the messenger Ibrahim. And Arabs were the progeny of Ismail, that is Quraysh. Bani Israel harbored malice and animosity towards Bani Ismail from the beginning. This animosity was to such an extent that even though they were awaiting the arrival of one to come with great anticipation, they rejected the invitation via the nubuwwat of Rasulullah, that is the last messenger, because his lineage was associated with Bani Israel. And they are still waiting for some Messiah. The case of the Kaaba becoming the Qibla for Muslims. The response to this objection of theirs was given in principle by stating that Jerusalem is the national center of Bani Israel, while Islam proffers an invitation to the whole of mankind to gather together in one center. So it is obvious that the center of this universal invitation should be that which covers the East and the West, that is the whole of world. Not that one which is the ultimate aim of life for some particular race or nation. Because Quran wants us to grow out of these basic affinities of life, because these then slow us down and do not bring self-development into it. It is in view of this very aim that Allah has guided this Ummah towards the right path according to His law of Mashiach. And law of Mashiach over here means all His laws, and we know about those, for example, the law of requital, law of respite, law of rise and fall of nations. This characteristic of this Ummah will appear before us in the next verse. Although the Quran ended the significance of the centers of nations by declaring the Kaaba as the aim of the heart and vision of the whole of mankind and the center of their collective entity, the conspiracy which the Jews carried out to retain the importance of Jerusalem remained very successful. And this is what happened, that after Quran ceased to be the constitution of Muslim state in the earlier era, then all kind of contaminations took place. This conspiracy was to fabricate false narrations and make them a part of the Iman of Muslims. Therefore, in the process of changing the direction of the Qibla among us, making the Kaaba as the Qibla in place of Jerusalem, a summary of the narrations which are quoted in our most trustworthy books of Ahadith is that during the 13 years of Meccan life, Rasulullah used to read his namaz by facing towards Jerusalem, even though he desired that the direction should be turned towards the Kaaba. And this is quite interesting while going through some of these ahadiths, which are quoted in volume 3 as well. We find it very interesting that totally contrary to the Quran, these kind of fabrications were included in these books. We go to the next slide, clarifying a few issues regarding the status of the Kaaba as the Qibla. The Kaaba was a place of worship before the nubuwwat of Rasulullah. For example, Quran says, فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ, let them obey the Rabb of this house, and then reminded the Quraysh about the benefits they are drawing from being the custodians of this house. الَّذِي أَطْعَمَهُم مِّن جُوعٍ وَآمَنَهُم مِّن خَوْفٍ. So Quraysh were getting benefits of having Kaaba in Mecca, who, that is Rabb, provides them with food against hunger and security from fear. The myth existing among us that the messenger and those who had accepted Iman initially used to say their prayers facing Jerusalem, so-called first Qibla, is not supported by the Quran. And this is a very important point, because the Muslims of today still consider Jerusalem somehow very holy, and they associate a lot of myths with Masjid al-Aqsa. This came about after the fabricated narrations attributed to the messenger came into existence during the era of Mulukiyat, and the Deen of Islam converted into the madhab of Islam, that is, it became religion. And nobody talks of Deen of Islam. For more details, see volume 3 under these verses. There is a lot of detail covered over there. At present, there is no system of Deen anywhere in the world. Hence, the status of the Kaaba, which is located in Makkah, is reduced to a place of ritualized worship. And we know all about it. Hence, there is no question of unity among the various sects, as the Quran does not exist among them as the only book of guidance. Because once we get involved ourselves, are obsessed with these ritualized practices, then people stop thinking rationally. They not look at the problems of the world and try to solve them, and then look at the spirit with which the Quran has asked us to create it as a center in order to come together. The aim of Tolu Islam is to present the system of Deen in its original pristine form. Without coming to the pure Quran, like the last messenger did, no possibility exists for achieving those prosperities which Allah has linked with the obedience of His book. The striving of Momineen cannot go to waste. We go to the next verse, 143. وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لَتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ وَيَكُونَ الرَّسُولُ عَلَيْكُمْ شَهِيدًا وَمَا جَعَلْنَا الْقِبْلَةَ الَّتِي كُنْتَ عَلَيْهَا إِلَّا لَنَعْلَمَ مَنْ يَتَّبِعُ الرَّسُولَ مِمَّنْ يَنْقَلِبُ عَلَى عَقِبَيْهِ وَإِنْ كَانَتْ لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا لِلَّذِينَ هَدَى اللَّهُ وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُضِيعَ إِيمَانَكُمْ Inna Allaha bin nase la raufun rahim. Hence, O Jamaat Momineen, do not take into account this objection of theirs. The aim of this program of ours is that you are made into such a nation which has an international status in the whole world, from which every nation is at an equal distance. See how eminent and lofty aim is of Jamaat Momineen. It is neither inclined towards one side nor distant from anyone. And its duty of life is that it is judge and guardian of the deeds of all the nations of the world. It should see that no nation has resorted to injustice and excesses. And we can see that absence of such a Jamaat, such a system, is a great problem for mankind. And the judge and guardian of the deeds of theirs is the messenger, that is the center of the system, who has the central status of this divine system. The question of the defining of the Qibla, that is the center, was very important. This question was, in reality, that of adopting a universal center for humanity in place of a nationalistic center. And presently we can see that how world is divided into different nationalistic centers. Hence that Qibla, O Rasool, which you have adopted, we have made this a Qibla so that both kinds of mentalities become separated. And it becomes clear who is the one who, in obedience to the messenger, by changing his outlook and abandoning all nationalistic affinities, adopts a connection solely with humanity. And who is the one who goes back to a nationalist affinity. So we have to grow out of these nationalistic feelings which are presently widespread in the world. Now continuing to next slide. Continuing from the previous slide, is quite a big verse, so I divided it into 2 slides. This change was, in truth, going to be hard on those people whose hearts were still trapped within the narrow spheres of tribalism. It is only possible to escape from these constraints when a human being makes the divine law his guide, instead of his own personal proclivities. So human beings also have to feel discomfort, unhappiness with the state of the world around them, and then start looking for some alternative. That is why Quran says that it only makes sense to those who are looking for guidance and do not approach this book mechanically. Because if we approach it mechanically, then we are not going to benefit from it. The one who is trapped in the narrow domain of nationalism thinks that by dispersing in the expanses of of humanity, his own clique becomes weakened, and that this leads to a great loss. And this is a very important statement over here, because if we are united at nationalistic level, we are scared of leaving that because there are certain benefits associated with being nationalistic. But Quran says that you have to grow out of it initially, at least at psychological level. But do not be tricked by what they say. Your iman in the welfare and nourishment of universal humanity will never become wasted. And this is a very important statement which the Quran has made, that your iman simply cannot be wasted if it is precisely that iman which the Quran has put forward. By treading in accordance with the law of Allah, man remains protected both from destructive forces, and he also acquires the means of sustenance in abundance. And Quran says in another verse, 110 of Surah Al-Imran, about this ummah, kuntum khaira ummatin ukhrijat linnase ta'muruna bil ma'rufi wa tanhauna anil munkari wa tu'minuna billah. We can read the rest of the verse in our own time. You are the best of people, evolved for mankind, enjoining what is right, forbidding what is wrong, and accepting iman in Allah. We go to the next verse, 144, the importance of a center for the system of Deen. قَدْ نَرَى تَقَلُّبَ وَجْهِكَ فِي السَّمَاءِ فَلَا نُوَلِّيَنَّكَ قِبْلَةً تَرْضَاهَا فَوَلَّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ وَحَيْثُ مَا كُنْتُمْ فَوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ شَطْرَهُ وَإِنَّ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ أَنَّهُ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّهِمْ وَمَا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا يَعْمَلُونَ. The meanings are, we also have knowledge of how this desire arises repeatedly in your heart, that the place, that is Kaaba, which has been declared as the center of this system, should be in our possession. This system as ours, and the center being in the possession of the enemies of this system, does not add up. So this is, Quran has quoted from the feelings and desires of the Messenger of Allah. We are witnessing how, due to this intense desire and perturbation of the heart, your gazes repeatedly look up towards us, stating, O Allah, let this center come in our possession. And now we are also desiring this, being the students of the Quran. Focus all of your attention on this very point, i.e., focused on the importance of this ideology whose symbol is the Kaaba, and the need to liberate the Kaaba from non-divine powers. And it is still under their occupation as of 2026. Tell the members of your Jamaat that no matter which part of the world you may be in, and whichever department of life you are endeavoring and struggling in, this aim should not disappear from your eyes. Very powerful statement over here made by the Quran, that don't let this aim go away from your eyes. Due to this, a unified outlook and mutual harmony will become increasingly robust within your Jamaat, and the desire to achieve your aim more speedily until such a point that the time arrives when you have to enter the battlefield willing to die in order to take the Kaaba into your possession. And we continue to the next slide. Continuing from the previous slide, the fact is that these people of the book know full well that this invitation of yours from their Rabb is a reality, because there is reference to this with them personally. But despite this, they are continuing to oppose it based on obstinacy and prejudice. We are aware of each and every act of theirs. And when Quran says that, that means the law of requital is taking care of all our thoughts and deeds. Regarding the Qibla, guidance is noted in another place in the Quran. This is why we commanded Musa and his brother Harun that for the time being, the place where your people are in Egypt, begin their intellectual and psychological training at that same place. Pharaoh will not give permission for this, that you can establish some training center for your Jamaat where they can have their assemblies. Hence, for the time being, commence this process in the very homes of the members of your Jamaat. And Quran says, making these your Qibla. So essentially, we are going through this stage of our own education and training and self-development. Initiate the system of Salat and keep giving the glad tidings of the fruits and outcomes of this system to your Jamaat, so that their morale remains high and their resolve remain energetic. So it's not an individual thing, it is about coming together and then educating and training ourselves, making use of all the means available to us in today's world. We go to the next verse, 145. Never leave the guidance of the Quran. وَلَئِنْ أَتَيْتَ الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ بِكُلِّ آيَاتٍ مَا تَبِعُوا قِبْلَتَكَ وَمَا أَنْتَ بِتَابِعٍ قِبْلَتَهُمْ وَمَا بَعْضُهُمْ بِتَابِعٍ قِبْلَةَ بَعْضٍ وَلَئِنِ اتَّبَعْتَ أَهْوَاءَهُمْ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا جَاءَكَ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِنَّكَ إِذًا مِنَ الظَّالِمِينَ. It is obvious that where arrogance and prejudice is operating, reason and evidence cannot produce any effect there. Even in a non-Quranic world, we can see the display of this, that people become when prejudiced and arrogant and hubris, and they display all kinds of problems in the world. That is why even if you present a word of evidences before them, they will still not adhere to your Qibla. And nor can you, against knowledge and vision, adhere to their Qibla. Because once we accept Iman, we see the reality of things and of our creation in the world, then we are not going to go back to the age of darkness in which we were previous to accepting Iman. Their own condition is such that though they are joined together in opposition to you, they keep their own Qiblas separate and are simply not united on one center. In any event, the one who is inviting towards the universal humanity simply cannot compromise with those people who are imprisoned within the narrow sphere of nationalism. If supposing, even after acquiring knowledge of the reality through Wahi, you become agreeable to obeying their wishes, then you too will be counted among those who rebel against the divine laws. So Quran has warned us as well that if you still wish to go back to that nationalistic feelings and those aims, then you will ruin your own self. You will be doing injustice to your own self. Next slide is when Haqq arrives, Batil becomes united. And this is very interesting, that previously Batil has lot of differences among themselves. They are divided, they are sectarian, they have parties, they have countries and nations fighting with each other. The moment Haqq arrives, that is of the Quran, they will all become united. At this place, explicit reference to the Jews and Christians has been continuing. You can gauge their mutual enmity from this, that Jerusalem was a holy city for both of them. The Qibla of the Jews was situated here, as was that of the Christians. So Jerusalem was for both Jews and Christians. But the Christians had destroyed the Qibla of the Jews brick by brick, so that nothing remained there of their temple, that is called Haikal, except ruins. And this is very interesting. Now they are very united, and they talk of Judeo-Christian traditions as well, because now they have to sort out these sectarian Muslims who are disunited and are non-Quranic. They, the Christians, did not permit the Jews to even enter the city. Such was the state of their mutual hostility. But they were both allies in opposition to the invitation to Islam. This reality in history is very strange, that groups which follow Batil, no matter if they are thirsting for each other's blood, they all united in opposition to Haqq. Observe the different religious sects among us ourselves. There is continual brawling among them, but they all united for opposition to the Quranic invitation. Following this reality, which was briefly mentioned in verse 144, is further clarified. And now we go to next two verses, 146 and 147. Verses 146 and 147, people recognize the truth of the Quranic message, but their unbridled desires prevent them from accepting it. الَّذِينَ أَتَيْنَاهُمُ الْكِتَابَ يَعْرِفُونَهُ كَمَا يَعْرِفُونَ أَبْنَاءَهُمْ وَإِنَّ فَرِيقًا مِّنْهُمْ لَا يَكْتُمُونَ الْحَقَّ وَهُمْ يَعْلَمُونَ. These people are well aware of these facts and recognize your message in the same way that a man recognizes his own sons. This is because prophecies about your coming are present in their alleged divine books, but the category of their scholars and religious elders knowingly and deliberately conceals this, because their own desires come before any other aspect of the book of Allah. Next verse is Al-Haqqu min Rabbika fala takunanna min al-mumtarin. Great advice given by Allah to Momineen. The truth has reached you from the direction of your Rabb. Remain in adherence to it. There is no need to enter into any altercations with these people who quibble. So Quran is asking us that just ignore what is going on with these people. Of course, we should know about it, that what kind of opposition will come in the path of Allah, but stick to the message of the Quran. Next slide is the era of rational approach is here. Prophecies about the coming of Rasulullah were present within the books of the Jews and Christians, and even in their mutilated and tampered state. These are to be found still in the existing Torah, that is Old Testament, and Bible, that is the New Testament. During the era of the sending down of the Quran, in order to counter the claims of the people of the book, it was necessary to present testimonials and evidences from their books. In fact, now the Quran has been explained in so detail that if one is looking at it with an unbiased mind, there are a lot of verses which can appeal to any newcomer. Of course, there are translations which are very poor and are mutilated as well, and these do not convey the correct meanings of the Quranic verses. Until recently, this style used to hold great importance in debates with Christians, but now there is no need remaining for this whatsoever. Now, instead of quotes, that is academic references, the word accords more importance to logic, reasoning based on knowledge and intellect. Therefore, a rational approach is required to prove the veracity of Islam versus other religions. Not only in versus other religions, because the importance of the spirit of religion is now becoming diminished. And we can see that people are moving away from their respective religions as more education comes into the community. But to convince men of knowledge and vision in the world that in order to extricate from the hell in which the nations of the world are trapped at this point in time, there is no remedy for this other than the Quranic system. So important is to establish some kind of a model state in some piece of land on Allah's earth, and that will then become a sign, a model for others to think about it. As human knowledge keeps on increasing and new facts keep becoming uncovered, whether these are regarding the external world or the inner world of man, all these will keep becoming living signs of the proclamations of the Quran, that every proclamation of the Quran is based on truth, that is al-haq. And we can go through rest of the verse from the Quran. Now we go to the next verse, 148. People follow their own aims. Momineen need to focus on the Quranic values. وَلِكُلِّ وِجْهَةٌ هُوَ مُوَلِّيهَا فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ أَيْنَ مَا تَكُونُوا يَأْتِ بِكُمُ اللَّهُ جَمِيعًا إِنَّ اللَّهَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. But despite this degree of significance in defining a center, this reality should not be ignored, that making some particular location as a center is not an aim in itself. So the Quran itself emphasizes that do not get trapped into some kind of a physical sign, because it is all about your self-development and establishing the system in some part of the land. In this, every nation has proposed some location as a center. The thing to see is how much you exceed other nations in works of welfare for mankind and for the vastness of yourself. Not merely in the luxuries and conveniences of life, which Quran permits, but it says to utilize these within its permanent values, but instead in works of achievement and welfare. If you kept this goal in front of you, then you may be in any part of the world and in any department of life The law of Allah will create real collective unity among you, because the basis of real collective unity is on the oneness of aim and ideology, not on the commonality of nation and race. Remember, the law of Allah is aware of the scales of everything and keeps full control over them. And this is stated in the verse by saying, Inna Allaha ala kulli shay'in qadir. Next slide, some further reflection on this verse. In connection with Salat, it has been noted in the meanings of the Quran, volume 1, that when abstract and invisible ideas acquire practical forms, then physical movement or tangible signs become inevitable for this. But when Deen turns into madhab, that is religion, and it becomes a private affair, then those ideas disappear from the sights, and in their place, their physical symbols become objectives in themselves. In this way, in madhab or religion, Deen becomes reduced to a lifeless form, a soulless body, or a mummified corpse. That is, the ritualized worship and practices become aim in itself. In the previous verses, the importance of the Kaaba was continuing to be discussed, and this process will also continue after this too. But right in the middle of this ongoing account, by pausing a while, or you could say by moving slightly off topic, the Quran has removed that risk which would follow when physical symbols became an aim in themselves, and to which all the followers of religions had become victims. It stopped and declared that the essential grandeur of the Kaaba is all very proper and correct. But take care that it does not happen that by narrating the characteristics of this structure, you begin to prove its superiority over the religious centers of other religions. Because Quran is interested in the outcome, the positive outcome for whole of mankind. We go to the next slide, reminding about the importance of self-development. A few verses later, the Quran has explained this reality with greater detail when it stated that لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تَوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَالْمَلَائِكَةِ وَالْكِتَابِ وَالنَّبِيِّينَ وَآتَى الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ. We have gone through this verse previously as well, but in the context of what is being discussed in verse 148, this is quite interesting verse. These people become ignorant of the aim of Deen, and by viewing a few rituals and rites as being true Deen, think that the performance of these is its goal. But do not somehow become trapped in this illusion. You should understand this reality well, that according to the divine law, the path of expanse and vastness through which man meets the divine standard is not that you turn your face towards the east or to the west. Even though for creating unity and oneness in the Ummah, it is also necessary to follow these kinds of physical symbols, that is, of coming together and resolving issues. But these are not aims in themselves, that is, just coming together and doing nothing and then disperse. The aim is the establishment of that system whose fundamental principles are as follows. Iman in Allah, Iman in the law of requital and the life in the hereafter, Iman in those cosmic forces which become the means through which to fulfill the program of Mashiach, Iman in the Anbiya through whom the message of Allah has been reaching mankind, and Iman in the books received through them. And despite affinity for the wealth making it available, we can go through rest of the verse in our own time from any copy of the Quran. Next slide is a few more comments. In Deen, outward forms, physical symbols, direction and dwellings are not aims in themselves, but as noted above and also in previous pages under verse 115, in madhab, that is religion, these same outward forms became declared to be the precise goal. When Islam was Deen, then in that the structure of the Kaaba and other gatherings and associated things was only this. But now among us, outward forms have become Deen itself. The sanctity of the structure of the Kaaba, that is stones and cement, has become a constituent of our Iman. And this is true in the case of these sectarian versions of Islam. The belief is also that Adam brought the Hijr Aswad, that is the black stone on one side of Kaaba, with him from Jannat. The concept of decoration and adornment of this building and the mechanical fulfillment of the rites of Hajj, the aim of Shariat, taking the lead and doing righteous deeds, which was only possible under the divine system itself, has totally disappeared from the sites. The Quran had stated that even if the structure of the Kaaba is not in your possession, if its goal and purpose remains before your eyes, then due to this, your collective form will remain intact. Because it is not Kaaba which will go with us in the life of the hereafter, it is our developed self. Wherever you may be in this way, true togetherness will be created among you. Because true togetherness depends on the unity of ideology and thought. So ideology is extremely important. The Kaaba is but its physical symbol. This criterion is defined by Allah. He has established a standard and scales for every purpose. Now we go to the next verse, 149. The system of Deen now has the Kaaba as its center in its cognition. وَمِنْ حَيْثُ خَرَجْتَ فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ وَإِنَّهُ لَلْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكَ وَمَا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ. Whether the Kaaba is in your possession or not, so Quran has made it absolutely clear, you should keep its goal in front of you. Wherever you may be in the world, keep all your attentions focused on this goal and aim. This is a message based on truth from your Rabb. Keep working according to it. Its result will of a surety be established according to the law based on haqq of Allah. As a result of this, that psychological transformation will take place in you, which is the foremost condition for external transformation, or is the cause for this transformation. And Quran says, وَمَا اللَّهُ بِغَافِلٍ عَمَّا تَعْمَلُونَ. So be aware of all the time that what kind of a psyche we have and how it is becoming transformed in the light of the Quranic study. We go to the last verse of today's presentation, 150. Always fear the consequences of going against the guidance of Allah. Never fear man-made systems. وَمِنْ حَيْثُ خَرَجْتَ فَوَلَّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ وَحَيْثُ مَا كُنْتُمْ فَوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ شَطْرَهُ لِأَلَّا يَكُونَ لِلنَّاسِ عَلَيْكُمْ حُجَّةٌ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا مِنْهُمْ فَلَا تَخْشَوْهُمْ وَاخْشَوْنِي وَلِأُتِمَّ نِعْمَتِي عَلَيْكُمْ وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ. You may be anywhere, and from there you may intend to go anywhere. Keep only the Kaaba as the focal point of your heart and outlook. Make it your Qibla intellectually, and I have highlighted it. This is very important, that these things should not become our deities. O Rasool, you should also do this, and the members of your Jamaat should also do this. This should be the collective program of all of you. If you keep acting in this way, then such sparkling results of your efforts and actions will appear before you, which will become the living evidence of the truth of your system, and no one will have the temerity to deny it, except those who resort to injustice and tyranny in opposition to it. And this is interesting because when Quran says make it your Qibla intellectually, that is, keep it in your mind all the time, then the change which is taking place in our individual psyche as well also becomes evidence of this fact that our path on Siraat Mustaqeem as defined by the Quran is the correct one. You should only fear that the rope of Allah should not somehow slip from your hands, and I have highlighted it. We have only given this code of laws for this very purpose, that you may acquire all the prosperities of life, and that every step of yours continues to be taken in the direction of your intended destination. Now what I have done over here is I'm sharing some pictures to remind ourselves in 2026 where we are and what is the state of the world without Deen as a system. This is first picture is the precincts of Masjid al-Aqsa, the so-called first Qibla, and people call it Bait al-Maqdis. I just put it here, and there is a lot of this is being covered in the media of today. Masjid al-Aqsa, and this is the whole complex of it, which is located in Jerusalem, which is now occupied by Israel. Dome of the Rock, so we should differentiate it. Dome of the Rock is the mosque itself where the prayers take place, whereas the whole precinct is Masjid al-Aqsa. Masjid al-Aqsa is the mosque and the entire complex, while the Dome of the Rock is a shrine, which is the masjid itself located within that complex, marking a significant site in Islamic tradition. I've taken it from Google. Masjid al-Aqsa often referred to simply as Al-Aqsa, and Aqsa means the mosque which is far off, which is distant away. As Al-Aqsa is the name for the entire mosque complex located in Jerusalem. It is considered the third holiest site in Islam, after Masjid al-Haram in Makkah and Masjid an-Nabwi in Medina. Built in 691 AD by Caliph Abdul al-Malik of Umayyad dynasty, and Umayyad dynasty was from 661 to 750 AD. And just for reference, we should keep in mind the last messenger died in 632 AD. So after his death, 29 years after his death, this mosque was built. And Kaaba of today, that is 2026, is, we can look at it and people going around it as a ritualized practice. And then this is the complex of Masjid al-Haram, whole complex, and we can see that black building right in the center of it. So we should keep in mind the context in which we are sharing these pictures. There's a lot more to it, but it is for some other time. To conclude today's presentation, presently we know there is no system of Deen anywhere on planet Earth. However, a state was established in Medina by the last messenger of Allah using the Quranic guidance. Its physical center was declared to be the Kaaba, which was the representative of this system, according to which this state was brought into existence. At that time, the Kaaba or Mecca was in the custody of the Mushrikeen of Arabia. Because Islam started from there, that the revelation started while the messenger was in Mecca, and then later on he migrated to Medina where the state was established. The control of its management and administration should have been in the hands of this Muslim state, because once the state was established in Medina, then of course Muslims had this desire that Mecca should come back to their control. This promise became fulfilled with the Meccan victory later on. In this way, the Kaaba became the focus of the Ummah, i.e. became their Qibla. This idea that the first Qibla was Jerusalem and after that the Kaaba became the Qibla does not get support from the Quran, and I have highlighted it. So under the sectarian versions of Islam, this whole belief is wrong and is not supported by the Quran. The Kaaba was declared to be the Qibla of the Muslim Ummah from the time of the messenger Ibrahim. And the last messenger and the Jamaat Momineen were declared to be the followers of Millat Ibrahimi. Hence, their intended Qibla right from the first day was the Kaaba. The aim of the Quran is to make the whole of mankind on the basis of ideology as one universal brotherhood whose tangible center will be the Kaaba, and the congregation which will resolve their matters will be called Hajj. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.